Self-respect is the quiet, unwavering force that underpins everything a woman is and does. It is not loud, it does not announce itself, but it is the anchor of presence. Before anyone can truly respect her, she must first respect herself. This respect begins in the small, seemingly insignificant choices she makes every day. It is in the way she speaks to herself when no one else is listening, in the way she honors her own needs before bending endlessly to please the expectations of the world. A woman who respects herself does not apologize for existing. She does not compromise her principles for temporary comfort or superficial approval. She understands that her energy is sacred and she treats it as such. Every thought, every action, every boundary she sets is a reflection of her internal valuation of herself. She knows that the world will mirror the way she treats herself, that the value she places upon her own presence will shape how others perceive her, and that if she tolerates less than she deserves internally, she will unconsciously allow it externally. This internal respect is not conditional. It does not fluctuate with the whims of relationships, the shifting opinions of society, or the fleeting validations of others. It is consistent, unwavering, a quiet compass that guides her through life. When she enters a room, it is not arrogance or superiority that others sense, but a grounded presence, a sense of integrity that cannot be shaken. A woman who respects herself understands her worth in silence, and that quiet confidence radiates a magnetism that draws respect naturally. Men and women alike feel this presence. They sense that she carries herself with an internal code, that she values her time, her energy, and her boundaries, and that any attempt to disregard or diminish her will be met not with defensiveness or aggression, but with calm, deliberate, unyielding clarity. Self-respect also manifests in the way she communicates. She speaks with intention, choosing her words carefully because she recognizes the power of her voice. She does not yell to be heard. She does not beg to be acknowledged. She does not manipulate to be valued. Her voice is steady, her tone measured, because she trusts that her existence and her truth are enough to command attention. She understands that respect is earned not by demanding it from others, but by embodying it first herself. This embodiment creates a natural boundary. Disrespect cannot take root where self-respect is firmly planted. When someone crosses a line, she corrects it without fear or hesitation. She does not grovel, she does not plead. She simply maintains her standard, and in doing so, she demonstrates a power that is both subtle and undeniable. The foundation of self-respect is also reflected in the choices she makes regarding relationships and the people she allows into her life. She does not tolerate manipulation, disrespect, or those who seek to diminish her light. She recognizes that the energy she allows into her life is a reflection of the energy she maintains within herself. If she treats herself with care, she attracts those who will mirror that same respect. If she undervalues herself, she unknowingly invites compromise, disloyalty, and disregard. This is why the cultivation of self-respect is not only an internal practice, but also a practical one. It shapes the quality of every connection she maintains. She becomes discerning not out of fear, not out of suspicion, but out of a deep understanding of her worth and the unwillingness to settle for anything less than genuine respect. Self-respect is also deeply intertwined with personal integrity. A woman who respects herself does not betray her own values for convenience or acceptance. She keeps her promises, not to prove herself to others, but because her word is an extension of her honor. She recognizes that internal alignment creates external harmony. When she honors herself, she naturally commands the respect of those around her. Integrity in thought, word, and deed signals a stability that is rare in a world where compromise of principles are common. This integrity is magnetic. Others cannot help but recognize it, even unconsciously, and it becomes the invisible standard against which all interactions are measured. Moreover, self-respect is expressed through self-care, not in a superficial sense, but in a profound, holistic way. She honors her body, her mind, and her spirit. She understands that to protect her inner world is to ensure her outer world remains unshakable. She nourishes herself with what she needs, not with what the world demands. She invests her energy wisely, not recklessly, because she knows that her vitality is sacred. Her boundaries are firm but kind, her choice is intentional, and her presence deliberate. Respect for oneself is an invisible force field that shapes every interaction and every opportunity that comes her way. She does not demand admiration. She does not enforce reverence. She simply exists in alignment with her highest self, and the world responds in kind. In the absence of self-respect, respect from others becomes hollow, temporary, and fragile. People may appear to value her, but it is a reflection of what she projects internally. Without a foundation of self-worth, any respect she receives is conditional, dependent on pleasing others, accommodating expectations, or suppressing her own needs. True respect, however, is unconditional. It arises when a woman knows her worth deeply and unshakably, when she honors herself first, and when she allows that sense of self to radiate outward. It is a quiet, powerful statement that says, I am here, I am whole, I am enough, and the world will respond accordingly. Emotional discipline is the quiet mastery of oneself, the ability to observe feelings without being consumed by them, and the power to act from awareness rather than impulse. It is the recognition that emotions are not enemies, nor are they chains that must control our behavior. Instead, they are indicators, subtle signals from the mind and body that reveal what matters, what is unresolved, and where attention is required. A woman who cultivates emotional discipline does not suppress her emotions, nor does she allow them to dictate her every reaction. She sees them clearly, acknowledges them fully, and chooses consciously how to respond. In this way, she transforms emotions from unpredictable forces into allies that deepen her self-knowledge and enhance her strength. At its core, emotional discipline is about presence. When a man says something intended to provoke, when circumstances shift unexpectedly, or when life delivers disappointment, she does not react immediately from habit or fear. She pauses. She breathes. She observes the feeling that arises within her without judgment. Anger, sadness, frustration, or disappointment are not signs of weakness. They are data. They are the raw material from which she can construct a deliberate and composed response. She understands that reacting impulsively rarely serves clarity, progress, or her inner peace. By holding space for her emotions before acting, she cultivates an inner landscape that is stable, resilient, and deeply respected. This discipline is not cultivated overnight. It is born from practice, from the repeated choice to remain present even when the mind screams for immediate action or the heart aches for emotional release. A woman who masters her emotions knows that she is not at the mercy of fleeting moods. She recognizes that emotional impulses are often temporary, like waves passing over the ocean of consciousness. She observes them, allows them to rise and fall, and chooses whether to engage or let them pass. In this choice, she discovers her inner power, a strength that comes not from control imposed externally, but from alignment cultivated internally. Emotional discipline also reshapes her relationships. A woman who responds instead of reacts transforms the dynamic of every interaction she engages in. When confronted with criticism, she listens with clarity. When faced with conflict, she approaches it with calm and discernment. She does not allow others to manipulate her through guilt, anger, or fear, because she has trained herself to notice the subtle mechanics of influence and to remain anchored in her own values. She communicates clearly with intention, knowing that respect is earned not through emotional volatility, but through consistency, presence, and integrity. In this way, her emotional discipline is both armor and bridge. It protects her from unnecessary harm while creating the conditions for meaningful, authentic connection. Inner strength is inseparable from emotional discipline. Strength is not loud or forceful. It is a quiet, steady energy that can withstand the turbulence of life without fracturing. A woman with emotional discipline does not need to prove herself through reaction or display. She embodies resilience. She meets challenges not with panic or resistance, but with awareness, recognizing that obstacles are inevitable and that her response determines the quality of her experience. In moments of tension, she does not collapse under pressure, nor does she lash out in desperation. She remains rooted, drawing from the well of her inner alignment, and in doing so, demonstrates a form of power that is invisible but palpable, subtle but undeniable. Furthermore, emotional discipline nurtures clarity of thought. When emotions run unchecked, they cloud judgment, distort perception, and compel impulsive decisions that may later lead to regret. By cultivating awareness of her emotional landscape, a woman gains access to a more accurate perception of reality. She understands not only what she feels, but why she feels it, and how to navigate the situation with intention rather than reaction. This clarity becomes a foundation for wise choices in relationships, career, and personal growth. She moves through life with a composed grace, knowing that her actions are aligned with her highest self rather than momentary feelings. Another aspect of emotional discipline is self-compassion. It is not a denial of difficult feelings, but an acknowledgement that feelings exist without judgment. A woman who honors her emotions without being ruled by them creates a space of acceptance and understanding within herself. She learns that vulnerability does not contradict strength. Rather, it enhances it. By allowing herself to experience emotions fully while maintaining composure and awareness, she develops a form of strength that is both tender and formidable. She becomes a presence that does not wobble under pressure because she has internalized the lesson that emotions are not the master but the messenger, and mastery comes from observing, understanding, and acting with intention. Emotional discipline also serves as a guide to freedom. Freedom from impulsive reactions, freedom from the need for external validation, freedom from the cycles of anger, jealousy, or fear that often trap others in repetitive patterns. A woman who cultivates this discipline does not allow her inner world to be hijacked by transient feelings or external provocations. She experiences emotions fully, yet she is not defined by them. In this way, emotional discipline becomes both a practice of liberation and a declaration of inner sovereignty. Men, colleagues, friends, and society at large cannot manipulate or diminish her because she stands firm in her understanding of her own emotional landscape. Her strength is evident not in confrontation, but in the quiet, deliberate mastery of herself. Through consistent practice, emotional discipline becomes second nature. She moves through life with an unshakable calm, a measured presence that commands respect and inspires trust. She does not need to dominate, argue, or assert herself aggressively because her inner strength radiates outward. It is an energy that others sense intuitively, a quiet authority that is impossible to overlook. Her discipline allows her to respond to adversity with wisdom rather than fear, to handle conflict with composure rather than volatility, and to cultivate relationships that are based on mutual respect rather than reactionary emotion. Authenticity is not a performance. It is not the careful curation of an image to please others or the concealment of one's true self to fit in. Authenticity is the quiet, unwavering alignment of inner truth with outward expression. It is the willingness to show oneself fully, without apology, without pretense, without fear of judgment. A woman who embodies authenticity does not measure her worth by the opinions of others. She does not bend to external expectations or craft a facade to manipulate perception. She exists as she is, fully aware of her strengths, her imperfections, and her unique presence. This alignment creates a power that is silent, subtle, yet profoundly magnetic. People cannot help but notice it, respect it, and be drawn to it because authenticity radiates a form of integrity that cannot be replicated or faked. Authenticity begins with self-awareness. A woman who is authentic has spent time understanding herself, observing her patterns, acknowledging her desires, and recognizing her limitations. She knows what she values, what she tolerates, and what she refuses to compromise. This self-knowledge is the foundation of her presence, the compass that guides her choices, and the lens through which she interacts with the world. It allows her to navigate life with clarity and purpose because her decisions are rooted in truth rather than expectation. When she speaks, her words carry weight because they are not manufactured to impress or conform. They are a reflection of her real thoughts and feelings. Her silence, her laughter, her gestures, and even her pauses are all authentic expressions of her being, and this consistency generates a deep sense of respect and trust in those around her. The power of authenticity is silent because it does not need to announce itself. It does not rely on charm, persuasion, or performance. People sense it intuitively. There is a calm confidence in a woman who is authentic that does not compete with others. It does not seek to dominate a conversation or draw attention artificially. Instead, it emanates from her very presence. Men, colleagues, friends, and strangers alike feel it in subtle ways, in the steadiness of her gaze, the alignment of her words and actions, the absence of contradictions between what she says and how she lives. This alignment creates a resonance that cannot be imitated or manipulated, a power that does not require explanation, and a magnetic quality that naturally commands respect and attention. Authenticity also fosters freedom. A woman who embraces her true self is liberated from the exhausting cycle of performance and approval seeking. She does not shape her behavior to avoid disapproval, nor does she compromise her principles for temporary comfort. She is free to express joy, sorrow, curiosity, and vulnerability without fear that these expressions will diminish her worth. In this freedom, she cultivates a presence that is natural, unforced, and profoundly attractive. Others sense this freedom and respond to it unconsciously because authenticity is an invitation for genuine connection. People are drawn to those who are real because it allows them to be real in return. The power of authenticity is relational as well as personal. It creates spaces where honesty, integrity, and trust can flourish. An authentic woman is also fearless in the face of criticism or rejection. Because her identity is rooted in self-knowledge rather than external validation, she is not easily shaken by the judgments of others. She understands that opinions are fleeting and often reflections of others' insecurities rather than truths about her. This fearlessness is not arrogance, it is the calm strength of someone who knows her worth and refuses to compromise it for temporary acceptance. Men respect this courage because it signals stability and integrity. There is no hidden agenda, no manipulation, no need to perform to earn approval. She is self-contained, and this self-containment is one of the quietest yet most powerful forms of influence a woman can possess. Authenticity also strengthens resilience. Life is unpredictable, and circumstances often challenge a woman's sense of self. When she is anchored in authenticity, she navigates adversity with poise because she is rooted in an unshakable core that cannot be dictated by external chaos. She does not change herself to fit every challenge, nor does she abandon her principles in times of difficulty. Instead, she adapts with integrity, choosing responses that honor her truth and maintain alignment with her values. This resilience is not flashy, it is subtle, steady, and profoundly impactful. Others recognize it, often subconsciously, and it generates a deep, lasting respect that superficial charm or fleeting beauty could never achieve. Moreover, authenticity allows a woman to form deeper, more meaningful connections. When she presents herself as she truly is, she attracts people who value her for that truth rather than an image she projects. Relationships become less about negotiation and performance and more about genuine alignment and mutual respect. She does not chase approval or manipulate attachment. She simply exists as herself, and those who resonate with that authenticity remain naturally drawn to her. In this way, authenticity becomes a silent power, not just in her presence, but in the quality of her interactions and the depth of her connections. Finally, authenticity encourages continuous self-growth. A woman who is authentic does not hide from her flaws or pretend she is complete. Instead, she observes herself honestly, learns from her mistakes, and seeks to grow without losing the essence of who she is. She balances self-acceptance with self-improvement, understanding that true power comes not from perfection, but from alignment with one's inner truth. This creates a subtle yet profound authority, a woman whose life is a reflection of her values, whose presence is consistent, and whose impact is enduring. Detachment from approval is the cornerstone of true confidence. It is the recognition that the validation of others is neither necessary nor sufficient to define one's worth. A woman who cultivates this detachment understands that seeking approval from others, whether consciously or unconsciously, places her power outside herself, and that no external praise, recognition, or acceptance can substitute for self-alignment. When she frees herself from the need to be liked, admired, or validated, she discovers a confidence that is unshakable, quiet, and enduring. It is a confidence that does not fluctuate with circumstance, opinion, or circumstance, because it is rooted entirely in the awareness of her own value and integrity. Detachment from approval begins with self-awareness. She observes the ways in which she has sought approval in the past, the subtle adjustments of behavior to please, the carefully curated image to impress, the unspoken compromises made to gain acceptance. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward liberation. She begins to see that the opinions of others, while perhaps informative, are never the ultimate measure of her worth. People are complex, biased, and inconsistent. Their approval can be fleeting, conditional, and often tied to their own insecurities or needs rather than to her true value. A woman who detaches from this external feedback understands that no one else has the authority to define her essence, and she claims that authority for herself. This detachment does not mean indifference or coldness. It does not imply a rejection of connection, empathy, or collaboration. Rather, it is a conscious choice to prioritize alignment with her own values, principles, and integrity over the fluctuating judgments of others. She can listen, consider, and even be guided by others' perspectives, but she does not depend on them to feel whole or competent. In this way, detachment is a subtle, yet radical form of self-sovereignty. It signals to the world that her energy is self-directed, her decisions are intentional, and her confidence is earned from within rather than borrowed from external validation. A woman who detaches from approval develops resilience in the face of criticism. She can hear harsh words, rejection, or disapproval without internalizing them, because she knows that her self-worth is not contingent upon external opinion. She evaluates feedback selectively, filtering what is useful and discarding what is irrelevant. In doing so, she retains her composure, her dignity, and her focus, while others often react impulsively, emotionally, or defensively. This discernment creates a subtle power. She does not need to prove herself, argue, or justify her existence, because she stands firm in her own understanding of her value. Her confidence is unshakable because it is not performative, it is the natural consequence of living in alignment with herself. Detachment from approval also reshapes her relationships. She does not manipulate, perform, or compromise herself to gain acceptance from a partner, friend, or colleague. She communicates clearly, sets boundaries decisively, and engages in connection from a place of authenticity rather than need. This creates a magnetic presence. Men and women alike sense that she is not governed by external demands, that her choices are deliberate, and that her respect must be earned rather than assumed. There is a rare, almost instinctive respect that arises when someone witnesses this kind of autonomy and self-possession. Approval becomes optional. It is no longer a driver of her behavior, and in that freedom, she becomes unassailable. The practice of detachment from approval also strengthens decision-making. A woman free from the need to please others can make choices that reflect her highest priorities, her long-term goals, and her core values. She does not defer to popular opinion, social pressure, or fleeting trends. She acts with clarity, conviction, and alignment, knowing that the quality of her life is determined by the decisions she makes for herself, not by the temporary applause of others. This decisiveness further reinforces her confidence, creating a feedback loop. The more she acts from alignment rather than approval, the more unshakable her sense of self becomes. Moreover, detachment fosters inner peace. When a woman is not preoccupied with constantly measuring herself against others, she is freed from comparison, envy, and anxiety. She experiences life without the weight of judgment, without the need to validate herself externally, and without the constant oscillation between approval and disapproval. Her energy is preserved, her focus sharpened, and her presence becomes calm, grounded, and deeply magnetic. Confidence rooted in detachment is quiet, yet it resonates strongly in every aspect of her life, in her voice, her posture, her decisions, and the way she navigates challenge and opportunity alike. Detachment from approval also encourages authenticity. When a woman is no longer driven by the desire to be liked or accepted, she can show herself fully without masks or performance. She speaks her truth, expresses her feelings, and embodies her values without hesitation. This authenticity reinforces her confidence because it is a natural byproduct of alignment and self-knowledge. She no longer fears rejection, misunderstanding, or disapproval because she has built an internal foundation that is resilient, steady, and self-sufficient. Men respect this power, often unconsciously, because it signals a form of presence and autonomy that cannot be manipulated, coerced, or controlled. Ultimately, detachment from approval creates a profound inner freedom. Confidence no longer depends on recognition, praise, or admiration from others. It emerges naturally from the consistent practice of self-alignment, self-respect, and intentional living. She moves through life with clarity, composure, and an unshakable sense of her own worth, unaffected by fleeting opinions or transient judgments. Her energy is centered, her actions deliberate, and her presence commanding in the most subtle, profound way, because she has cultivated a power that is independent of the world's approval, rooted entirely in the sovereignty of her own being. Boundaries are one of the most profound expressions of self-respect, a quiet declaration that one's energy, time, and well-being are sacred. Yet, boundaries are often misunderstood. Many see them as walls, as acts of punishment, or as signs of rigidity. In truth, boundaries are neither punitive nor reactive. They are the deliberate practice of self-preservation, the conscious decision to honor one's inner life, and the recognition that personal limits are essential to maintaining integrity, clarity, and peace. A woman who understands the nature of boundaries does not use them to control others or to assert dominance. She establishes them gently, firmly, and consistently, not to create distance unnecessarily, but to protect the space in which she can grow, think, and exist fully. Boundaries begin with self-awareness. A woman must first know what she values, what she can tolerate, and what she cannot. She observes her own energy, noting when it is depleted, misused, or taken for granted. She listens to the subtle signals of discomfort, frustration, or irritation. These are often indications that a boundary has been crossed or is needed. By honoring these internal cues, she begins to recognize the areas of her life that require protection. This process is not reactive, it is conscious. She does not establish boundaries out of anger, fear, or resentment. She establishes them as a reflection of self-respect, a recognition that her inner peace is a priority, and that the quality of her life depends on how well she maintains it. The act of setting boundaries is an act of self-protection. It is the refusal to allow the energy, demands, or expectations of others to compromise one's well-being. A woman with boundaries understands that saying no is not a rejection of others, but a reaffirmation of herself. It is a conscious choice to prioritize her values, time, and energy over the desires or pressures of external forces. This clarity creates a natural authority. Others sense the seriousness of her limits without the need for argument or justification. The respect that arises from boundaries is organic because it is grounded in integrity, not in coercion. Boundaries communicate silently yet powerfully. This is who I am, this is what I will accept, and this is what I will not. Boundaries also cultivate inner freedom. When a woman clearly delineates what is acceptable and what is not, she frees herself from resentment, confusion, and internal conflict. She does not expend energy on trying to please everyone, nor does she suffer from the consequences of overextending herself. She moves through life with intentionality, choosing how to allocate her attention, emotion, and effort. This freedom is a source of quiet strength. People are naturally drawn to it, even if they do not consciously understand why. There is a magnetic quality to someone who knows their limits, honors them consistently, and refuses to compromise their inner peace for temporary appeasement. It is important to understand that boundaries are not punishments for others. They are not designed to shame, manipulate, or teach a lesson. A woman who sets boundaries does not do so to punish a partner, friend, or colleague for crossing a line. Instead, she does so to maintain the integrity of her own experience. If she were to act from frustration or anger, the boundary would lose its clarity and purpose. True boundaries are calm, deliberate, and communicated without hostility. They are invitations for mutual respect rather than instruments of control. By holding her limits firmly yet kindly, she demonstrates strength without aggression, authority without oppression, and clarity without judgment. Boundaries also teach others how to engage with her in meaningful ways. When she communicates clearly about her limits, she provides a framework for respectful interaction. People learn intuitively how to treat her, not through fear or coercion, but through the consistent practice of self-respect. This clarity eliminates ambiguity and fosters healthy dynamics because those around her are no longer guessing about what is acceptable. They respond to her presence with consideration rather than entitlement. The energy of her boundaries creates an invisible structure that guides behavior naturally without force, argument, or confrontation. Moreover, boundaries are essential for emotional and mental well-being. Without them, a woman becomes vulnerable to exploitation, manipulation, and exhaustion. She may find herself overcommitting, overextending, and ultimately depleting her energy to satisfy the expectations of others. Boundaries are a preventative practice. They protect against the slow erosion of confidence, clarity, and autonomy. They allow a woman to cultivate the space necessary for reflection, growth, and intentional action. In this way, boundaries are not limitations, they are enablers. They create the conditions in which she can thrive, focus, and act with integrity rather than react impulsively. Boundaries also reflect a deep understanding of the reciprocity inherent in relationships. By protecting herself, a woman implicitly communicates the importance of mutual respect. She does not tolerate intrusion, disrespect, or disregard, and in doing so, she encourages others to operate from a similar place of integrity. This creates a dynamic of mutual care and accountability. When she enforces her boundaries with consistency, she cultivates trust and respect because people understand that her limits are not arbitrary, They are an expression of her principles and her commitment to her own well-being. Finally, boundaries are a daily practice. They are not established once and forgotten. They require vigilance, reflection, and reinforcement. Each interaction presents an opportunity to observe, adjust, and reaffirm limits. This ongoing practice strengthens confidence, clarifies priorities, and deepens self-respect. A woman with firm boundaries moves through life with composure, authority, and a sense of calm power. Because she has taken responsibility for her inner space, she protects her energy, and she honors her own value above fleeting pressures or external expectations. High-value presence is not a performance. It is the natural outcome of ongoing personal growth combined with the cultivation of stillness. It is the quiet, commanding energy that radiates from a woman who has invested in herself, who knows her worth, and who moves through life with intention rather than reaction. Growth and stillness are the twin pillars of this presence. One cannot exist without the other. Growth without stillness becomes restless, scattered, and performative. Stillness without growth becomes stagnant, rigid, or disconnected. Together, they form a foundation upon which a woman builds a presence that commands respect, inspires admiration, and naturally attracts alignment, trust, and connection. Growth begins as an inward journey. A high-value woman invests time, energy, and attention in understanding herself. She explores her strengths and weaknesses, reflects on her patterns, and seeks to cultivate awareness in all areas of life, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. Growth is deliberate. It is not about superficial accumulation of skills or knowledge for the sake of appearances. It is about refinement of character, cultivation of wisdom, and expansion of consciousness. She reads, reflects, meditates, and seeks lessons in every encounter. Each experience, whether challenging or joyful, becomes an opportunity for deepening insight and refining her sense of self. This continual growth fosters confidence, clarity, and authenticity because she no longer relies on external validation to define her value. Her value emerges naturally from the integrity of her inner work. Yet growth alone is not enough. Without stillness, a woman's energy can become frenetic, her presence diluted by constant activity and distraction. Stillness is the practice of quieting the mind, centering the spirit, and creating a space in which awareness can deepen. In stillness, she observes herself and the world without judgment, without impulse, without the need to act or perform. She learns to be comfortable with her own presence, to hold space for reflection, and to respond to life from clarity rather than reaction. This stillness is not passivity, it is intentional receptivity. It allows her to process emotions, integrate experiences, and cultivate patience. A woman who embraces stillness develops a grounded energy that stabilizes her interactions, creating a magnetic calm that others sense immediately. Men, colleagues, and friends are drawn to her because she radiates composure, thoughtfulness, and a sense of quiet authority that cannot be fabricated or forced. The interplay of growth and stillness also enhances discernment. A woman who is committed to growth gathers insight and understanding, while stillness provides the clarity to recognize what is truly valuable and aligned with her higher self. She becomes skilled at recognizing what deserves her attention and what does not, which allows her to navigate life with intentionality rather than reaction. In relationships, this discernment manifests as the ability to set clear boundaries, choose companions wisely, and maintain energy in alignment with her values. She does not chase attention, manipulate outcomes, or seek validation through effort. Instead, she radiates value naturally, and her presence draws those who resonate with authenticity and integrity. High-value presence is also shaped by consistency. Growth requires dedication and patience. Stillness requires practice and reflection. Together, they create an energy that is steady and dependable. This steadiness is a form of unspoken authority. When a woman speaks, others listen, not out of fear, but out of recognition of her clarity and groundedness. When she acts, it is deliberate, measured, and impactful, because she has cultivated the inner resources to respond rather than react. Her presence becomes a mirror of her inner state. The more she grows and the more she rests in stillness, the more natural, powerful, and magnetic her presence becomes. Stillness also allows for emotional mastery. In the quiet of reflection, a woman can observe her emotional patterns, recognize triggers, and choose how to respond to challenges or provocations. She does not allow transient feelings to dictate her actions or distort her presence. Growth provides her with understanding and insight into herself and others, while stillness provides the composure to act from awareness. Together, they cultivate resilience, a presence that is not shaken by criticism, adversity, or external chaos. High-value presence is calm in the face of storms, poised in the midst of tension, and measured even when circumstances demand action. The synergy of growth and stillness further deepens authenticity. A woman who evolves continuously and pauses intentionally becomes fully aligned with herself. She knows her values, understands her strengths, and accepts her limitations. Her words, actions, and energy are consistent, and this consistency communicates integrity without effort. Men respect a woman whose presence is rooted in self-knowledge and reflection because it signals stability and reliability. Authenticity, confidence, and magnetism emerge naturally from the combination of inner development and centered awareness. Growth and stillness also create space for influence without force. A woman does not need to assert control, dominate conversations, or manipulate perception to command attention or respect. Her high-value presence is felt in subtle ways through the steadiness of her energy, the alignment of her choices, and the clarity of her perspective. People are drawn to her because she models what is possible when life is approached with intentional growth and measured reflection. Her presence becomes both inspiring and stabilizing, a quiet force that shapes the energy of every space she enters. Finally, high-value presence grounded in growth and stillness allows a woman to navigate life with freedom and purpose. She moves with intention, speaks with clarity, and acts with discernment. She is not distracted by the need for external approval, nor does she allow impulsivity to define her interactions. Instead, she embodies the result of continuous self-cultivation and deliberate centering, creating an energy that is magnetic, resilient, and deeply respected.